Hey everyone, Monarch here, and, well, I was not expecting this. I was not expecting to be making another video so soon, especially with this news, I'm just gonna say, because what in the hell is Monster Hunter Wilds doing? I had been wondering for a while now on where this game would go after Title Update 2. I've been very sold on the idea of keeping it to Apex level monsters. That's the idea I've been pushing and seeing them trying to do for the past few updates that they may do into the future, at least until a certain point where they can then ramp off into Elder Dragons and other stuff like that. I was not expecting that ramp off point to be this early. What the hell? And much less, it's with Omega from Final Fantasy, of all things. Like, what? What do you mean? I mean, sure, like, this is, I guess, the next big game that they're really banking on from Monster Hunter. Jeez, like, you get what I mean, right? Where, like, World was the big push, so they're wanting, like, okay, let's try and do some unique collaborations this time around. So I guess it kind of makes sense that they'd come back to it again with the other big game that they want to do after World. I just was not expecting Omega, of all things. I think it's safe to say that most people were probably expecting something like Bahamut, for instance, since that is arguably the most popular summon in the whole franchise. And definitely the most iconic, with a variety of designs and, abilities to choose from. Or maybe even any of the other summons, maybe something like Shinryu. I've always been a fan of, Shinryu, since the Behemoth update came out in World. That's something I personally subscribe to, but Omega. What the hell? Safe to say a lot of people are very put off by this decision to feature a largely technological, machine-based enemy into a game well known for its ecology and ties to nature. Which I can understand. It's certainly not my first choice as well. If you were to give me the keys to the room and say, you get to choose a Final Fantasy monster as the crossover, I don't think I would choose Omega as my first bet. But after stewing it over for most of the day, talking about it with others, discussing the idea of Omega in this game happening, I can see the potential with Omega. I can see why they do it for a game like this, because Wilds is already sticking to themes of technology and ancient civilization. I mean, this was the same game that dropped the series redefining lore bomb of Wyveria, the ancient civilization, the constructs, and fucking the equal dragon weapon, Zoshia itself. Again, they aren't the exact concepts that were put in the concept art books all those years ago, but they basically are those ideas just retooled and modified to fit into the current setting and world that the developers want to create. So it's like, okay, if we're already examining a story and world, redefining the culture and history of it with Wyveria by officially creating construct monsters, artificial monsters that have no reproductive organs or whatever, we're gonna make an environment in Wyveria dedicated to this artificial process with the Wilk, with the Guardians, make it the most alien and unique environment in the whole game. If we're gonna have a whole story about Arkveld literally climbing its way back up into life, essentially, into having a choice in the matter, having a life to live, by absorbing energy and getting that privilege, that ability to live once again, to know what it's like, then yeah, I can see why they pull for the mechanical interdimensional space traveler that often is seen fighting dragons or searching the world for the strongest possible life form and trying to evaluate their strength and evolve from there. Which, yeah, that's also another thing. Like, if we were to base a Final Fantasy crossover monster off of, like, credibility with what their abilities are in universe, then Omega gets boosted high up there because, I mean, the dude already travels between dimensions. From Final Fantasy V all the way back in 1992 to all of his variety of appearances, there have been a few appearances where it's specified and stated that it's the same Omega as in a different game, or alternatively that there are multiple Omegas essentially that are traveling between the interdimensional rift and appearing in all these various games. So, you know what? Fair. That makes sense. If we're going to have something like that appear in a game, might as well be the interdimensional traveler. And it's, again, very interesting that they chose specifically the Final Fantasy XIV version. Because another thing about this crossover that's really odd to me, and that I find funny, is that if I had a decision, I would have assumed they would go for something from Final Fantasy XVI. Because that is the most recent Final Fantasy game, and it seems like that's been the one they've been trying to promote and market since it came out, where you even got Clive Rosfield in Tekken 8 as a DLC character, before other characters like Tifa, which people were fucking mad about. But yeah, I'm surprised they didn't go for FF16, something from FF16 like Ifrit, Leviathan, Bahamut from that game. That said, that would probably still be a little ridiculous because most of the icons in that game are basically just kaijus. They're just kaijus. So there's a size problem there, and also with FF14 Bahamut. I mean, the guy literally broke out of a moon-sized prison. How the fuck are we fighting that? But also, it's like, I mean, even then, there was no Omega in the DLC of FF16, so it's just interesting to me that they pull from FF14, because, I mean, yeah, it's still going on, it's still getting updates. It recently got an update in Dawn Trail, which capped off the story, from what I hear. Probably because also it's the same team that they collaborated with and talked to for the Behemoth crossover, and they did say during Gamescom that after the Behemoth crossover is done, that they wanted to do something like this again. They wanted to do another crossover in the future. So plans for this must have been made very early on to get the licensing agreements, to talk about how to change the fight and translate it into Monster Hunter, and also what they could learn from something like Behemoth, Extremeth, Leshen, and Ancient Leshen. Which brings me to an overall point of how I feel about Omega in Monster Hunter, because it's been very split for a lot of people. One part of it is very much the fact that a lot of people have trauma, to say the least, from Behemoth, Leshen, and Ancient Leshen. A lot of people do not like how they were handled, essentially, in Monster Hunter World, or how they changed up the gameplay mechanics. So, you know, how with Behemoth you had the callouts on the side in terms of his attacks, just like how in Final Fantasy XIV, there are the callouts with when a monster is in an attack, there's a little charge bar that indicates how long it's going to take for that attack to come out, so you need to position yourself carefully. And then it also brought in mechanics like Ecliptic Meteor and the Enmity line, which are things that actually went forward into Monster Hunter for a few instances, like the Enmity mechanic and Ecliptic Meteor was brought back for Safajiva, and even here in Wilds, we have the same exact thing here with Jin Dahad having Ecliptic Meteor and Enmity if you are aggressive enough to him. So they've definitely had an effect in terms of monster gameplay, and some people are worried about that. They're worried about what kind of mechanics Omega will have in the fight, how they will be executed, if it's going to be as boring or as bad as Behemoth, Extremeth, Leshen, Ancient Leshen, and if that will impact monsters going forward with their mechanics and what they do. Which, I mean, is hard to say. I think it's a little too early to say definitively on how it'll go, because we literally only saw a few seconds of gameplay from Omega. Like, we don't know a lot. We see that it's in Jin Dahad's arena, which I'm thankful that they're including something in Ice Shard Cliffs, because I was thinking and saying that after Tile Update 2 that the other locales needed some love in terms of Tile Update treatment. Like, it's mostly been a lot of Scarlet Forest with the Tile Update monsters. So Regios is the one exception because he can also appear in Windward Plains, he can be in Wyveria. And I mean, technically speaking, Zoshia is also Wyveria, but it's a special little pop-up event. So I'm glad to see that one of the other locales, that being the Ice Shard Cliffs, got a little bit of attention. I can imagine that's straight up like only an event quest in terms of finding him, or if they want to factor in the schedule mechanic, that it's going to be like Jin Dahad and that it can crop up every now and again in the Ice Shard Cliffs depending on like inclemency or time of day. I mean, other than that, it can charge a big laser and the hunter tries to block it. That's it. That's all we know. So yeah, I think it's way too early to speculate and say definitively on how the gimmicks are, because the thing about gimmicks is that they're not bad as an idea. Gimmicks depend entirely on execution. It depends on how they are described, how they are told to the player, how they are executed through the gameplay, the second-to-second moments that we make, and how the boss moves. Because I'll say, I don't think Behemoth at base is bad. I think at the best of times, Behemoth is actually pretty fun. But the problem with Behemoth came into play with Extremoth, which was a little too far along the lines. And then Leshen was interesting in terms of the Witcher quest details and how it was handled, but overall was okay, I guess. And then Ancient Leshen was just very annoying. So some people may say that's already a bad omen. The fact that crossover monsters so far have been good at best or just awful at worst. But hey, I wouldn't count it yet, because I feel like given the amount of time that's passed since those crossovers and where the team has gone since then, plus games like Iceborne, Rise, and Sunbreak, that they'd learn from their mistakes, they'd learn how to experiment with the mechanics and figure out what to do this time around. Now that said, there is some concern or a lot of memes going on about Larbird and Starboard, and I've been joking about it myself in my Discord. So, you know, there is obviously the fact that we can look at his fights in 14, the normal Savage, and if we really want to go there, the Ultimate Edition, but just because its fight is like that in its base game doesn't mean it will be 100% like that in Wilds. We could see some of the mechanics, we could see some of the moves, yes, and there are definitely way more interesting mechanics and moves from what I've seen and heard compared to Behemoth. So I'm optimistic, and I cannot wait to see people react to the moves or get frustrated if Larboard or Starboard is in the fight. That's gonna be fun to see. There's also people who are not happy with this inclusion and say that it's wasting a slot that could go to another monster, which, like, cool. It's your opinion at the end of the day. More power to you for believing that, because I do not agree with that sentiment at all, and I think it's kind of a ridiculous sentiment to have. Like, this idea of saying definitively, no, the roster should have not been like this, that this is a waste of time. It should have been dedicated to other things. Like, trying to act like the developers, essentially, like you know what's going on in the office, like you know better than the people behind the project, essentially. Like, sure, you could be disappointed, but don't go as far as to say that it's a waste of time and production efforts. Don't say it as if it's... I don't know. It's weird. It gives me the same vibe as like this kind of complaint in something like Pokemon or Digimon. It's like, who asked? You're not the person in the dev team meeting. You're not there in the boardroom. You don't know what's going on. You don't know how they make the decisions, the development plans, or whatever else. And I don't think you have the right to say that, like, oh, it shouldn't have been in the game, when there are people who are happy and are going to be introduced into Monster Hunter and Wilds because of Omega. But there's going to be this boost of popularity because of the crossover, which that's part of the reasons why crossovers happen. It's to gain attention, traction. It's to bring in new people who might not be familiar with the original game into giving it a try. And I mean, that's not me devolving into corporate speak, that's just kind of how it is. It's not really that diabolical or evil of a plan as you might think. It's just the nature of crossover. Smash Bros does it, Tekken does it. So many other games out there do crossovers, and I know we're kind of in an era where we're saturated in crossovers, especially in stuff like Fortnite, but they're not necessarily a bad thing. Once again, they can be good or bad, it all depends on execution. It's like, even if you want to say, that's a wasted slot or should have been replaced by something, replaced by what? What? Like, what would you even want to have in the update? What would you think would go along with the flow of a game, or what you imagine the flow to be like, what the title updates seem to be shaping up into? It's very weird. It's very dramatic, and I'm gonna be honest, kind of reactionary. Very extreme perspective, which, yeah, I mean, that's kind of just a lot of the internet or our culture nowadays. And besides all that, there's also the concern some people have in terms of the information coming out, that this is going to be a more story-oriented event quest or title update, that there's going to be some narrative here with Omega and what he's doing here, which has some people concerned that this may permanently affect the world going forward, or it may have implications to the history of Monster Hunter, Wyveria, or something like that. And again, we'll have to see, but I don't know about that, because the thing as well is that, like, even if we look at the past crossovers and event quests and stuff like that, the canonicity of it still varies and fluctuates from bit to bit. Like, some of it isn't exactly written in stone. And I mean, unless if there is straight up confirmation in the update via dialogue or whatever with, like, referencing the Behemoth quest, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure about the likelihood of this affecting the overall world state. I think what they mean by narrative is, at most, it's gonna be an in-house storyline, essentially. It's gonna be self-contained to the third title update. It's probably going to explain why Omega is here, as well as the Cactuars, the Chocobos, and maybe a Final Fantasy character is gonna be here as our representative, like how there was the Moogle in the Behemoth crossover as our guide, essentially. I don't know, maybe fucking they pull Y'shtola from 14 to act as our guide and someone to talk to throughout the whole quest. I think that's what they'll do. I think that's what they'll do when they say that title update 3 is gonna be narrative. It's not going to be affecting the overall world or having huge world implications, because that'd be a ridiculous thing to drop in the third title update of all things. Because I still feel like that in terms of title updates and story, they are building up to potentially Shigaru Magala in, like, the final title update. They're building up to something going on with the Frenzy, there being an outbreak, and I swear on my money that whatever's going to be happening with Shigaru, if they do it, with the Frenzy virus, it's going to lead directly into the expansion. So I wouldn't worry about any worldwide implications in terms of Monster Hunter and its history. I can't say much about the Final Fantasy side of things. I'm happy that they're doing Arkfeld as the crossover monster. It's kind of like a no-duh, considering he's the flagship of Wilds. Looks to be guarding Arkfeld specifically because of the glow and the lack of pupils, from what I could see. which is an interesting pull that they're doing Guardian specifically. It seems like they're kind of doing a little bit of a story here where he's going around sucking elemental energy from the surrounding wildlife, and that's why the Warrior of Light has to investigate. It's just that I don't play Final Fantasy XIV. Like, the only Final Fantasy game I have played is 16, from beginning to end and through both DLCs, and that's about it. I plan on the future playing some other games. I mean, I have a 7 Remake and Rebirth available due to family, and I know quite a bit about Final Fantasy depending on the game, especially 14 through internet osmosis over the years, but 16 is the only game I've played, so I can't say a lot about Arkfeld being a raid boss in 14. Other than, he looks cool. He definitely looks cool. I hope his fight's fun. The mechanics are fun. And I'm hearing talk as well that people are hoping that the Arkfeld gear in the crossover that people get as glamour, that they're hoping that it's accurate to the game, because there's something involving Rathalos from last time where it wasn't exactly his armor, at least faithfully. So yeah, that's about all I can say. But those are overall my thoughts on Omega. Overall, I am extremely excited about Omega and what he's potentially going to mean in terms of the game. I'm looking forward to how they're doing the mechanics of the fight, what it's going to be like, how challenging it will be. I am really holding on to the copium that they're going to mix some 16 Omega elements in there, maybe play Iconoclasm. That's me on copium. And yeah, I can't wait to see what this fight does, what the gear is gonna be, because I have no fucking clue what we're going to get in terms of gear. If it's gonna be something centered around Stormblood era, since that was when the Omega raids happened, maybe like Samurai armor or like Xenocia Galvus. Alternatively, I was thinking if I want to go for something more encompassing the franchise, maybe the Warrior of Light outfit from Final Fantasy 1 featuring the Sword and Shield. I'm really not sure what they're going to do in terms of the gear, but I'm curious to see what it will be. I'm curious to see how Omega will fare in terms of the gameplay, how challenging he'll be, the mechanics, what that's gonna be like in a solo and multiplayer instance, because that's another thing a lot of people are wondering, like if it's gonna be as multiplayer focused as Behemoth was, which is another reason why Behemoth and Extremoth have such a split popularity, essentially. And I'm curious to see where this will go for the rest of the updates in the future, because if we're already doing the crossover monster in the third title update, which is going to be a massive bump up from the Apex agenda I was pushing and thinking about, then it's like, well, that kind of throws a wrench into the plans. I guess at this point we're going to be doing around Elder Dragon tier. Is this we're gonna get some Elder level threats like a Cantor New Canlos, Shengaren? I'm not sure, but I'm curious to see what they do. And again, for all the people worrying that this is gonna be another world where all the updates from here on out are just gonna be crossovers, I don't think it's gonna be like that. Clearly enough time has passed. I think they've learned their lesson, or they picked up on feedback. And with, again, the story elements they're pushing with Wilds, the Frenzy Virus, and potentially Shigara Magala, I think it's more likely that they're going to be doing their own thing for, like, the next 2 updates. If the next update is a crossover, then the final update is, for sure, going to be their own thing. But those are all the thoughts I have for this video. Let me know down in the comment section below what you all think of Omega being in Monster Hunter Wilds, what your thoughts on his inclusion, what his fight may be like, the mechanics, the gear, and whatever else you think about in relation to Omega's inclusion in the game and what it means for the game going forward. That's all cool. You're also free to click on the links down in the description below to join me at my Bluesky, as well as official Discord server, to hang out, talk with people there, or stay up to date on any future updates or posts I make about videos. And yeah, I have been the Monarch of Dragons, and I hope you all have a fantastic day / night wherever you live. Peace and Kulos Volt.